Paul, it's lovely to see you. How are you today?
Oh, I'm very marvellous. Thank you very much. Enjoying the the sudden chill weather, a little bit of winter. It's always nice.
Fantastic. Now, listen, I name drop, but you name drop for England in the introduction that we've just heard, and actually, one of the names I'm a huge fan of.
I was trying not to. I was trying.
Well, yeah, you did, and I think I see. I mean, people watching on video, Bosun podcast won't see this, but you're wearing purple. Is that in honour of Dame Edna?
Yes, always. She was my first employer in television, so I always respect her with a bit of purple now and again. A nice regal purple reminds me of her. She's an extraordinary figure. And you know what? She was very different. Cool. It was Dame Edna was a distinct person. You know, we worked with Barry Humphries, who's a very elegant Middle European Australian gentleman in fantastic suits, wearing, you know, beautiful hats, and very, very elegant and controlled. And then you suddenly meet Edna, who's about 8 feet tall in her shoes, and she's this extraordinary creature that she is meeting an entirely different person to Barry Humphries. It's very separate. Your relationship with Edna.
Fantastic. I love that. I love that. So, I mean, obviously I've dropped a few names, and there are others too. How did you work with people like Dame Edna and Caroline Aherne? How wonderful! Some fantastic people there. Was it one-to-one that you worked with them, or were you sort of briefed and you went off?
Well, it depends, and each project was different. And I mean, in Barry's terms, I worked with Barry as primarily a researcher, because he had a writer figure, but the researchers were very active in coming up with material for him, and we were sent out to try and find out things and then come back with things like penguins dropping stones in front of a mate. We had to find something tasty for him to enjoy, and so it was quite a collaborative process. And with Caroline it was the same, but there was a group of writers, but you know, sometimes I worked just with her, and sometimes we worked as a big group, so it depends. And over my writing life, it's always been a mix of things, but I mean, I've really always enjoyed having those kind of one-to-one intimate relationships with a creative person, with a performer, or with another writer, because that's when you really dig deep and things start to happen, you know.
And do you think it's important as well to do that one-to-one in order to find their voice in your writing?
Exactly, because I mean, I don't know how you do it otherwise. I mean, I know some people claim they can do it by reading things or whatever, but when you're in a room with someone, you understand them, you feel their rhythms, you feel their energy, and writing is kind of finding a voice is energy, and it's also a rhythmic thing. You know, people talk in a certain way, their mind works in a certain way, and you need to spend time with them to really get that, and that's a great privilege, and it's great fun. And I mean, I was lucky to have that with people like Alistair McGowan when we created this big impression show, he and I, in a little room upstairs in this office in Soho. We just sat there for like a week or 2 weeks, almost creating the show out of nothing. And he'd worked with other people, and we just got on terribly well, and we brought out the best in each other, and we challenged each other, and we came up with a show that was a huge hit and won a comedy award. And I think that's a fantastic way to work with people, and for people who aren't professional comedians, people who aren't brought up that way, it's a really nice safe space, because what happens in the room stays in the room. It's kind of an exploration together. You're digging into things, you're digging into people's lives and stories and how they see the world, and it's a very private and special thing, but it ends up taking both of you and into places that you wouldn't do just by, you know, exchanging emails or sending someone a script and thinking, oh, I think that sounds like you. I don't know how people do that, to be honest. It doesn't appeal to me. It's not a method that I want to use, and it's certainly not in my plan for this, you know, working with people remotely. I'd want to do it as intimately as possible, you know, one-to-one in a room, or having met each other, maybe then we can start to do Zooms and things like that. But you do need to have that connection, you know.
Absolutely. Now, your business is called True Funny, right?
Yeah.
And you talk about finding the true funny. I quite like that, 'cause it's a play on words, isn't it? On too funny, true funny. That's very clever. What is true funny, and why is it important for speakers to find their true funny?
Well, let me answer the second one first, I suppose, because I think now the way things are and the way the world has become, especially in the world of business and speaking and conferences and things, as far as I can tell, it really does feel like people want to feel that they're talking or being talked to by human beings, relatable people a bit like them. They don't want, I don't think, the old kind of business gods appearing in a slough of dry ice to hand down the words of wisdom from the mountain. They want to feel that they're looking at and hearing from people like them, people who've made mistakes, people who've been on a journey, people who've learned from life, people who have things to say, but have often come out of adversity or difficulty that's allowed them to burst through into some kind of success that they can then share. And having humor is very much part of that, because, as you know, humor creates an immense bond with people. People feel privileged and feel entertained. They relax, and humor creates a great connection. And, you know, these post TED days after Ted's done his talking, and people just can't just stand there flicking through slides. I think those days are probably gone, and I don't think they'll be mourned. And I think it's even more so now with people going back to work in this new world where you know, a lot of people are still working at home or still seeing their colleagues maybe once a week, if they're lucky, maybe once a month. So when they join up at conferences, somehow the feeling of meeting together is that it should be more celebratory rather than just a grind. And it should have a kind of a feel of a party's the wrong word, but it's not a solemn exchange of information. And I think the direction of travel in speaking is only going to go more towards entertainment and feeling, adding to that feeling of sociability and connection, and that's where humor really comes in. So for me, the true funny, I mean, it's what I'm trying to say with that is it's a kind of humor that's completely true to you, to the person who's making it, because it's not something. It's not a stand-up routine. It's not some jokes you got off the internet. It's not bog standard, you know, boilerplate funny things that could apply to anyone. Because what I'm interested in and what I think works best is something that's completely genuine and feels authentic and comes from you, your life, your background, your experiences, and the things you've done and the things you've done well, and the things you've done badly. And that's a massive part of the humor that will connect with people, because you're up on the stage being like them. You've gone on similar journeys to them, you've made similar mistakes, and you're creating laughs, mostly at your own expense, out of them, that connect people and allow them a space. Because, you know, a speech is ultimately, it's you standing there, but you're reaching out to all of those people as individuals. You're trying to touch them. You're trying to give them something that they can learn from, something that means something to them, that feeds them, that helps them. And you know, I think because everything, it's well known that memorability comes through jokes, and humor is a much more memorable statement than just bare facts. And so humor just helps that connection enormous. And speakers, it's challenging to go out there without it in a way these days, I would say. I don't know if you agree, if you think that that's the landscape, but that's what I seem to be seeing from people.
I love humor. So for me, and I've always loved humor, and all the time that I was a booker, I was always looking for the speakers that had humor in their speaking, especially if it was a very heavy subject. And I was known for that. So many clients came to me specifically when they had a specific topic and said, you know, who are the guys that are funny? It's interesting you talk about, you know, their true funny, something that's authentic to you. And I think in speaking, in the world of speaking, in the same and similarly in the world of comedy, you don't want to be using other people's material, right? It's a major sin. And so if it's authentically you and your true funny, that's going to be original, right?
Yeah, it's going to be original. It's going to tie into the originality of your speech, because you would any more than you'd want to be using someone's material about the serious stuff. There's no way that you'd want to be using it about the funny stuff either, wouldn't you? You wouldn't put someone else's graph up there on the screen. So why would you use someone else's jokes? You've got to use jokes that actually, or humor that comes from you and your life and your viewpoint and your experiences, and they become incredibly connective. And the more true they are, as in, this is true of all humor to me. I mean, all the great funny comedians, everything that really has flown in the history of comedy, from Laurel and Hardy to Steve Coogan, or The Office, David Brent. They're all based on an absolute truth. The reason that that The Office is such a worldwide hit in the English and American versions, and it's hundreds of versions around the world, is it's fundamentally true to human experience, that there's always those people in any organization who want to be the great entertainers, want to be the great leaders, and they haven't quite got it because they don't listen, and they're very selfish, but that makes them very lonely. So I mean, there's a massive universal truth in David Brent, and that's the reason it's successful. And that's true of every kind of humorous attempt that you want to make. And if the more that you can tie it into yourself and your experiences and your journey, the more the audience will connect with it, and the bigger the laughs.
Love it, love it, love it, love it. So, okay, let's be honest here. It's scary to try and be funny on stage. And I'm sure a lot of speakers are worried that they're going to, going to have tumbleweed when they're expecting a laugh. Although I suppose they could pretend there wasn't supposed to be a laugh there. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, that always works.
Yeah. So should you be scared about adding humor?
Well, I think it's probably as people in the speaking business, you and your audience out there are listening to this. How many times have people said to you, "Oh my God, you're a speaker. You stand there on the stage, talking to people, using words, making speeches, what you don't even have an auto cue. That's frightening. That's my worst nightmare." How many times? Endless people have probably said that to you, and your answer to that would be, well, I don't just turn up and stand there and start speaking. I work at it, I prepare, I write things down, I shape my argument, I construct my visuals, I think about the drama, I try things out, I learn it, and then I learn it again. You work very hard before you stand on a stage. So nobody's throwing anyone out there naked in the speaking business. And this is absolutely true of being funny as well. I mean, it's a reckless thing to ask anybody to stand up there and just suddenly be funny if they haven't prepared. But I think, like everything that you're doing in the speaking world, if you prepared for it and practiced, then you can perform. If you get your 3 Ps right, preparation, practice, and performance, then it becomes a seamless process. But it is a process, and it has to be worked at. And a lot of people don't quite know where to start with that, and don't really know how to continue. And that's where someone like me comes in, I hope, offering a helping hand, and offering someone who's been there and done it before and knows how to help them find the funny within themselves in the right process. So the people have gone away and prepared this, they've worked at it, you've looked at the options, you've then practiced it, and then you perform it knowing that, the first time you do it is probably not going to be 100% right, because nothing ever is, certainly not in comedy. I mean, all of the great comedians, all of the great stand-ups, they spend weeks, months preparing for a stand-up tour, doing little clubs and little tryouts and trying out material, and standing up there with a notebook and, God, that doesn't work, and coming back the next week with it slightly tweaked and trying again. Everything in speaking, but also especially in comedy, is a process, and it needs to be taken as such, and you're on a journey, and you're not going to arrive at your destination first time out. But if you're patient and you're diligent and you're also kind to yourself, then the rewards are fantastic. And you know what? Audiences want you to succeed. Audiences are generous generally. And if they feel that you're on that journey and you're doing it with a kind of generosity of spirit, and you're doing it to entertain them, to make their day better, that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to say, look, you're sitting there for 8 hours in this conference. I'm helping you here. I'm giving you something that's lighter. I'm giving you a little bit of a break from anything that's too, heavy. Then audiences recognize that and are deeply grateful, I suspect, and will be very indulgence the wrong word, but certainly you don't need to fear an audience. An audience isn't out there to destroy you. That's one of the many differences between this world and say stand-up comedy, where they can be out to destroy you, where there is that kind of bull baiting, bear baiting thing still a little bit in comedy clubs, and you get drunk people shouting things. Well, I don't think you get that too many times at the events that speakers are speaking at, and the audiences are much more kind and supportive, and they want you to succeed, and the more you give them, the more likely you are to succeed.
Lovely. Yes, I think you're right. I think fueled by a bit of alcohol, you probably do, and sort of late at night, and it's been a long night. I think comedy clubs are probably quite dangerous places. So it sounds to me then, because you say there's a process, so it sounds to me that anyone can learn to be funny. Is that what you're telling me, if I know what the process is?
I think so. I think there's this idea that some people are the natural funny ones and the rest of us are all, forget it. But no one is born funny. I mean, or everyone's born funny. When you think of babies, to their parents, they're hilarious, aren't they? I mean, every baby's a hilarious comedian, and over time, to get a bit Ken Robinson, the funny kind of gets squashed out of you like other forms of creativity, doesn't it? Because everyone tells you that to be funny is not to be serious, and to be serious is to be committed and to be good, and whereas actually the truth is being funny is in my opinion a far harder thing than being not funny. Telling something straight, just factually is a very easy thing to do. Trying to find a funny account of something that digs underneath the skin into the real truth of what's going on, is of human behavior. That's what comedy is. It's a science. It's a study of human behavior, what people do, not what they say. And the gap sometimes between what they say and what they do is where we get our laughs. And that's what makes it even harder to do, because you're having to really think and find things. And so it's a place of great intelligence. Some of the smartest people in the world are comedy writers, but
of course, Paul, of course. Absolutely.
They are. Well, not me. I've met some very smart people.
I'm sure. Wonderful. So will you share what the process is? Can you?
Well, the process is mainly, do you know what? It's very different with every single person, because what I believe in is making it completely bespoke, because every speaker comes with different needs, a different speech to do, a different sector that they're talking about, and they're very different people. So there's no one process. I mean, what I think is what I'd like to do is we have a chat on a Zoom call for 30 minutes. We decide what the issues are and what help people need, and then we book in our first session. And I like to start with 2 good days, because it's very hard to get to know someone in a few hours or an hour. So I think, you work hard in those 2 days. We get to know each other. I get to understand your speaking process, your aims, your goals, your wishes, where you've come from. And then we start digging into try and find this funny gold in you in your life, your stories, how you got there, what these experiences are that you're talking about, and try and look at them in the round, and if you do have stories about them, look at how you're telling those stories, and consider whether those stories are working hard enough for you, whether they're just being thrown away, or whether they could, you get more drama out of them. It's not just about finding funny, because I've got a lot of experience of drama as well. So you're looking at the, creating the maximum amount of impact, surprises, twists and turns, and that's the process. So for those 2 days, you really just work at it. And often happens is that, I had a client recently, lovely man. He's a very experienced CEO, and he came to me saying he wanted to be lighter and funnier. So we started looking at his stories, and it turned out his kind of tentpole story was he was throwing away so much. You know, he had this fantastic dramatic encounter with this boss where he was taking a high risk to come out with a new idea to this boss, and he just said, well, I went to see him, and it was you know, very scary, but I went in anyway. And I said, hey, let's just take it back a bit here, and we worked at really setting the scene, painting the picture, saying who he was, where he was in his career, where he was, you know, where this office was, how scary the steps leading up to it, knocking on the door, what was in his head. It created a real dramatic moment of this, and it made the story, the impact of the story was so much stronger because we had the stakes involved. We had a sense of jeopardy, you know, all those drama words like stakes and jeopardy. But stakes and jeopardy add to comedy as well, because, you know, you really get the pictures of people and where they're at and what they had to do. So that came out of that process, and it's completely changed the speech and its structure and its delivery and everything. And that story has now become a story that runs throughout the speech. And I know that's had a huge positive impact. And it's things like that. It's that you start off going, well, I'm going to add a couple, we're going to be a bit funnier. And you end up, because you're humanizing and dramatizing and finding the lightness and the groundedness, you know, which is what all comes as part of this process. It changes a lot. So yeah, it's a great process. And then after that, if people need specific things or more, or we can do others. But I mean, it starts what I call the deep dive, you know, because you can't hear someone's voice in 5 minutes on a phone call. You have to really listen.
Absolutely. So tell me, obviously, aside from spending a couple of days with you, either in person or on Zoom, if people are based somewhere else, which is a wonderful, I've done it. It's a wonderful experience to spend time unraveling some stories. And I didn't realize I had so much humor in my life. And yes. now I actually look at my life, and I look at my family, and I look at various conversations that I'm having, and I will sit and giggle, and people say, what's going on? I say, well, I'm finding the funny here. And
that's it. I mean, that's where the gold is. It's in your life, it's in your relationships, and you of course use that gold, you know, because it can be kryptonite. You have to use it carefully and diplomatically and fairly, and make most of the humor about you
and not the other people. Yes.
You know, but you're using that experience as a kind of, as the energy, the coal to fuel the fire, aren't you? Because it just, you know, the people that you know, and what your parents were like, or what your first boss said to you, all of these things add into great stories that have formed you now. And, you know, they're part of the human story of you. This is what people want to hear, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So listen, I'd like you to leave us with something that we can go and apply, because let's have a little taster. Let's have a little sample. I'm going to put you on the spot here. Gosh. What is one practical thing people can do straight away to begin to find their true funny?
Okay, well, right. Well, one of the first things you can do is to try and look at what the stuff that you find funny already, and go, well, is it, if it's a stand-up, if it's a sitcom or a TV show or a film or whatever. And what's really, really good is to start, try and, up to now, you've probably just experienced it. You just listened to it and watched it and laughed, and try and get a little bit of more of a critical sense of what's going on there and what you think is appealing to you. So what I think you should do is just watch it 3 times, at least 3 times. So get a clip, and the first time just watch it and enjoy it, and maybe make a few notes of what you thought was going on there. Now, the second time, after it's over, what I want you to do is just get one of those voice memo things on your phone or whatever, and just speak into the phone, and pretending that you're talking to a friend over a coffee. Start describing why you like it, what was going on, why you find it funny. Try and articulate your amusement and your joy. Try and really, you know, paint a picture of why that meant something to you and why you found it funny. Then you go and make yourself a nice cup of tea and have a biscuit and take the dog for a walk or whatever, and then come back. And now this time watch it again with a notepad and a pencil in your hand. And what you're trying to do now is to turn yourself into a real critic. Now, that doesn't mean looking at it negative, trying to find fault. It's just trying to see it analytically, trying to work out what's going on here. What's the story underneath the story? What are they trying to say here? Is there a big point? Is there a character point? What's it about? You know, in the way that I mean, like, for example, you look at the Office, and everybody says it's about a bloke who's a bit of an idiot. And then if you look at the whole series, and if you're kind of have your comedy critical phase of mind in, you go, do you know what? Every single person in every single scene in The Office is basically lonely. And The Office as a series, and very much in the David Brent character, but all of them are lonely. And it's a comedy about loneliness. And they're all trying to look at me, look at the fantastic things I've done, look how funny I am, look how successful I am, look at me, Dawn, I'm gorgeous. You know, every character is on the same journey of loneliness. And try and think about those subtextual things, and start thinking about how this works for you. Is the comedy that you like the kind of way you'd like to be on stage? Is some of the tricks or some of the things you feel are going on there, is that tying in with you? Could that be of use to you? So you're starting to think critically, because when it comes to actually doing comedy and looking at your humor and adding in humor, as the process goes on, you're going to have to stand back, look at what you're trying, look at the buttons you're trying to press, look at the buttons you're not trying to press, seeing how effective they are, and seeing a little bit more of the engineering of a funny moment or a humorous moment, so that you can, as the process goes on, be the person who gets the spanners out and makes those little adjustments that you're going to need. That story was too long. The setup was too involved. There were too many characters in my story. There wasn't enough of a character in the story. There was too much backstory. It started too late, or nobody understood where we were. I need to set the scene. You know, all of those things are what the process are going to involve. So the first thing you can do on your own before you come and hang out with me and we have a fantastic time that's going to change your life forever, is to start the process of being a little bit critical about things that you've just found fun, in the right way, analytical critical, not negative critical. And that's really what you'll start to get a sense of. I mean, like Peter Kay, great comedian. You look at him, you think, well, he's just funny, he's hilarious, he connects with people. And then you realize what he's doing is that all of his stuff is about people's childhoods and his childhood, and it's completely connecting one-on-one. It's like a Lego brick going completely over its audience, because everything that he's talking about, people have experienced. People have taken Kaplunk into school on the last day, and people have watched their teachers get on the coach snog and looking like they're going to snog each other on a school trip, and all of the stuff, you know, it's watch the kids sliding on their knees at wedding. All of that stuff means something to us. And what Peter Kay is doing, and the reason he's the richest, most successful comedian in the country, is that he is, by talking about this stuff, he's validating all our own childhoods. Everything that we did has meaning. It's what we all did. It has a connection. It's part of our shared history. So you're part of a world that makes sense, and that's the reason he's immensely funny and immensely successful. And so you can start thinking to yourself, well, what world or what connections am I going to be making? What's the thing that's important to me, and how does that tie into my other ideas? So that's a start to the process that you can do on your own. And it's a kind of an attitude, a practice to get used to thinking of funny things as being a little bit of a machine that's built and can be adjusted.
Fabulous. I like that. Analytically critical. Fantastic. Love that. I'm going to go off and do that very shortly. All that's left for me to do is to thank you, Paul. Thank you so much. I hope it hasn't been too painful.
No, it's been lovely. It's so
Wonderful.
nice to talk. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. And thank you for listening to the Speaking Business podcast. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. And if you did, please leave a rating on Apple Podcasts, tell your friends and share it. I've been Maria Franzoni, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye-bye.